Hello, Helen here. Welcome to my channel. Today's card's going to be a completely different type of card than I usually do. I've been interested in trying some alcohol inks for quite some time, and I finally relented and bought some. So I'm going to be using 3 different green or pool colours and a bottle of the blending solution, and also this Liftoff alcohol ink pad that helps with the lift-off technique. So the colours I'm using are Pool, Patina and Mermaid, and then the blending solution. And I'm also using these felt circles that go on your mini blending tool, and I'm going to help move the inks around with like that. And then I'm also going to be using Yupo paper, which is specifically for alcohol inks. It's a non-porous plastic paper so that the inks don't sink into it. They sit on the top and are able to move around. Now I'm going to start by doing the colouring of the Yupo paper that I'm going to use for the background of my card, or it's actually the main part of the card. Now I'm by no means an expert at this. I've only just had a couple of plays with a couple of bits of paper and some colours, so I'm really winging it here. I'm going to just put some dots of the blending solution onto my paper first, so that when I drop in the alcohol ink it will spread and move. And I'm really just going to build up layers, so I'm going to use the felt blending tool to just move some of the ink around and fill in most of the area on my paper, because it's the same size as my card bases that I use. So I'm just really going to start by doing a layer of colours and moving that round, and then I'll just build up layers on layers until I'm happy with it, because what I'm going to do is I'm hoping to make a sort of leaf green sort of background, and I'm going to lift off the leaf part so that it looks lighter than the rest. You'll see in a minute when I come to do the stamping. So really just playing around with layers, and there's no right or wrong with it. You just keep putting on more and more on top of each other until you're happy with it. Now here I'm going to use a metal straw just to help move the ink around a little bit on the top. You can also use one of those air pump things that or airbrush things that you use with alcohol markers. Some people might have them in their stash, but a straw is just as good. And just blow through it, and you can move ink around a little bit on the surface of the Yupo paper. So I did a bit of that, and I just kept going back in and using the blending solution and the inks on top of each other until I got a fairly filled in background. It's definitely quite mesmerising watching the alcohol ink move. It resists the next colour, so it sort of moves in circles and things. It's quite fascinating, and I really enjoyed the playing with it. And the actual end result looks a lot more intense in real life than it does on the video, so the greens really stood out really beautifully. Now the next thing I'm going to do, and this is perfectly optional, is I'm going to use some foil. Now normally I would just use scraps of foil, but I used them up with the last couple of goes that I had with the alcohol ink, so I'm going to just use a bit of the Minc Teal foil, just cut off a small piece. And what you can do is when the alcohol ink gets tacky, you can rub the colour side up onto the alcohol ink and some of the foil will stay behind. It's a heat resistant foil I'm using, but you could just use the deco foils if that's what you've got. I did this a little bit too soon and ended up just lifting off some of the ink onto the back, and then I tried drying it with the heat gun and doing it again, and I dried it too fast. So there's really a fine line between when it's the best stage to do the foiling, but I did get a little bit of foil on it, so I was happy with that, just as a little bit of a highlight. I did one of my examples, I did the playing around, I did some gold on a pinky purple background, and it looked really stunning, so you can get quite good effects from the foiling. Sorry, the camera just doesn't pick it up very well, but there is definitely some on there, and you can see it in real life. Just gives a little bit of a foil touch to it, so I like the effect. The stamp I'm going to use for the leaf Liftoff design around the border of the alcohol background, I'm going to use this Altenew leaf clusters stamp, and I'm going to try and do all one side at a time using the technique, and then turn it around and do the other side. So I'll just peel off some of the stamps from the set and arrange them down the sides so they're just coming onto the page, so it's going to make a border right around the outside. So now I'm going to use the Liftoff ink pad to stamp the area that's going to go onto the card and then stamp that onto the background. Now, as I believe it, what the Liftoff ink does is to lift off some of the alcohol ink where the stamp is, so then when you peel it off, it comes off of your background and onto the stamp. So in between stamping, you really need to clean off the stamps really well, because otherwise you're just going to be spreading the ink around and putting it back on again somewhere else. So I made sure I cleaned it very well in between. Here I am blotting some of the excess ink that's sitting on the surface away with a paper towel, and then I'm going to give it a rub just to take off any ink that might still be sitting where I've just lifted it off, and you definitely see the leaves pop a little bit more, which helps the look, but I'm still not very happy with how the result of it's going, and I think it's something that I'm going to need to practice a lot more. So in my opinion it was a bit of a fail, but I carried on because I didn't want to waste the background that I'd done. And so I turned it around and did the other side as well. But first I ended up deciding to put the stamps back on, see whether I could line them up and relift a bit more off, because I wasn't totally happy with how much had come off. So I did a little bit of mucking around, and I ended up with a result that was kind of okay, but I wasn't that thrilled with it. So I think definitely I need to do some more practice with it, but it was usable, and I ended up finishing it and making a card with it. I feel that definitely made a difference, and it looked more like how I wanted it. The problem is that the ink's so sticky that it lifts the background off where I've got it placed on the Misti, and it's really hard to line back up again. So I persevered and carried on and did the other side, and the result's kind of alright, I guess. I'm going to carry on making, putting a sentiment on and making it into a card for my brother-in-law, so I don't think he's going to be that critical of it. The next thing I'm going to do while I've got the Misti out is to stamp my sentiment. So I'm just going to keep it really simple. My brother-in-law isn't really fussed about what cards I give him, so I'm just going to do the happy and the birthday out of this Ranger Letterite birthday stamp set. The birthday I'm going to fussy cut out, and then the happy part I'm just going to keep in a banner, and that's going to be just go above it, both raised up on craft foam. So now all my components are done, I can put the card together. So I've got my background, a card base which I've stuck double-sided tape on, and I'll just peel that off and stick my card base onto that. And then I have the sentiment that I've fussy cut out the birthday and made the happy into a banner, and I'm just going to put some foam tape onto the back of that and stick that down sort of in the middle of the card. And then I've just got a few turquoise iridescent sequins that I'm just going to dot around just to liven up the card a little bit. But it's certainly a different card for me, and I'm not sure whether it's a fail or not. I sort of feel like it is, but I'm prepared to do a little bit more practicing with the lift-off technique and some different stamps and see what I can come up with. But for now, this one's okay. It's definitely okay for a mail card, so I'll go with it. Thank you for watching today. It's lovely to have your company. I'll see you next time for another video. Bye for now.